hearing a familiar tune, Tom?
A little catchy tune that we have that starts our show, as it were.
A little whiskey on the Mississippi to get us going?
Yeah, we can do that. Wait. We got... Last time we were doing the Mexican...
Oh, yeah.
All right, wait, here.
About the drug cartel, sure.
Yep, I'm going to change up right here.
Oh.
The Matrix is a system, Neil. That system is our enemy. When you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
This sounds radical.
It is radical. It is.
My gosh, we wouldn't want to offend anybody. It's radical.
Was it Lawrence Fishburne, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
Fishburne or Fishborn?
I'm not that big a fan of that movie. I know that's a big letdown.
I can't remember the guy's name.
Fishburne.
Yeah, just call me Morpheus.
Morpheus.
For the next hour and a half, you call me Morpheus.
I'll work on that.
Welcome to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show, folks. Great to have you with us. Hope you'll be interested in what we're going to chat about. That's always a good thing.
It's just Tom and Brad. We're just hanging out on a lovely Tuesday night doing a show. So we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for doing so. This is Annoying Peasant Radio Show. We hope that you would find us on Facebook, if you would, so we can keep you apprised of things. Just search Annoying Peasant Radio on Facebook, and we will keep you updated. You can even like us. We don't have cooties. So think about liking us.
Hey, and maybe even Tanya's listening to us tonight.
Maybe.
Last week, I know she said she missed us, and she had to listen to us the next morning.
Yep.
But I put on Facebook that we were going to be on, so maybe she's listening in. So if you are, welcome to the show, Tanya. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. So, Tom, could there possibly be anything on your mind tonight? Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to get off your chest?
Yeah. Actually,
Here we go. See, this is like throwing a firecracker in a gopher hole.
You know, now that you ask, I didn't have anything until you asked.
Here we go.
But since you mentioned, hey, here's something
fun.
that was a little shocked me because I haven't been paying attention so much lately. Primary night tonight.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I can't remember this. Arkansas is one of them, a few of them, and where's Mitch McConnell? Tennessee, Kentucky. He's Kentucky.
And I just read on USA that he crushed his Tea Party guy.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Show him.
Well, and see, I don't keep on. People are going to think this is crazy, but I don't keep on top of the politics part of it so much.
Yeah. Well, why aren't you a big Mitch McConnell fan, Tom?
It just happened not to be.
What?
It was. I don't know.
What? So you like the guy that he's going to be opposing, the Democrat?
Yeah. Well, not so much.
Okay, wait. You got to like one of them.
Yes, that's how you're supposed to be.
Now I'm pitching a underhand.
Right. You're either a Green Bay Packer fan or you're a Viking fan, right?
Right. In this part of the world,
yeah,
sure.
You just have to be.
You got a blue or red.
And I just struggle with that whole thing, because in the end, it's all football. And the deal is, are you a fan of football or are you not a fan of football? Which is, are you a fan of this political system or are you not? That's the question, Brad.
Okay, I'm calling you out on that because I know you're a Packer fan.
All right.
So you can't talk purple to me.
Trapped like a rat.
Now, I'll give you that I think that I might believe you about the Republicans and the Democrats. Mm-hmm. So, I had one of those conversations over the weekend myself.
Yes, I heard you did.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was just interesting. I don't know that it's a profound avenue of discussion, but I saw an old friend of mine that I hadn't seen since most of the winter, and we got started chatting, and one thing led to another. Pretty soon we're talking about current events and whatever, and I just was. He's a good friend of ours, and I just was surprised that how quickly since I'm kind of desensitized to all of this now, and I see that I believe for a long time that blue and red in the end really don't matter because there's so much overlap.
Right.
People are spitting and driving off the road right now, but I study political science, and if you look at their platforms, there's just not that much difference.
Yes.
And I believe it's even deeper now because I've been to so many of the groups that are trying to find common ground. That group in Madison that I've been to,
Yes.
and they said themselves, they're like, you know what? In the end, we differ on about 5 or 10%, and that's about it. We'd hate to admit that because we like to fight for our side,
Right.
but they hate to admit that. So I was just reminded that every in our political system, however you're raised or however it works, there's a lot of people that find solace or find belonging or whatever to one of the sides as something that's important to them.
Yes, that's actually quite interesting, and I think that's, of course, one of our many challenges that we have is to get people to see this in a totally different light, right? And people see I'm either red or I'm blue.
Yep.
And to me, I look at the reds and the blues, I say that's purple, right?
Mm-hmm.
One's a little bluish purple, one's a little reddish purple.
Well, you get an occasional radical that'll go, well, I'm a moderate.
Yeah.
I used to be one of those.
I'm independent.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the Constitution Party. I'm
Right.
all these crazy people.
Right.
Well, they...
Fringers.
Yeah, and I've always felt, or I shouldn't say always, since I've learned about this for about the last 10, 12 plus years, that the real question you need to ask yourself is, do you think it's acceptable, and acceptable is not a good word, but for the moment we'll use that word, is it acceptable to to initiate violence against someone? Think carefully.
You're talking crazy, Tom.
Right.
Violence? Seriously?
Right.
You want to use that word? We have a peaceful system.
Yeah, we'll get there. But those questions, do you think it's appropriate to initiate? Remember that word initiate, to start, to be the first one, to use violence against someone. And you got to maybe get yourself in a little bit of a box and go, I try to answer that one yes or no. And some people might think and go, well, it depends. I go, no, think about it closely. Initiate the violence. And then the other one is about, do you own yourself? Or does someone else or some other agency, some other institution have a claim, or at least a partial claim to you? Mm-hmm. If you answer basically in the affirmative to those two things, now I can take you down a completely different path, and we can analyze the existing system through that lens. And I think it's kind of what's been happening to you over the last couple of years.
Well, we've talked about this many times, and I think at face value, what you just said about initiating violence makes you sound crazy.
Yeah.
No disrespect, I know you are, but it makes you sound even more crazy. And then own you. Well, heck, yes, I own you.
Yes.
I own me, or you own you.
Right.
Well, why would there be any speculation or suspicion that we don't own ourselves? Because I'm not enslaved.
Those are great observations, because mostly from the fact that that's how most people see it, mm-hmm. right? And I know that's why you're doing that. But if I can get you to follow on those first two things, called the non-aggression principle and self-ownership, then we can talk at greater length, and as we have on this show, a great length on both of those and what those mean. And actually, we can point out eventually how those vary quite a bit from what we have today. And again, that's another 100 shows.
Yep. And our previous 50 or 100 shows, whatever it's been.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what this show's kind of about, pointing out those instances, and when you think, oh, well, of course, we're free right now.
Right.
And when we go through some of those differences,
we're free.
Maybe
we're in a peaceful society.
Uh-huh. Yes, 700 military bases to keep the peace. Plus, right? And how many foreign countries? There's so much to go around that. But anyway, I didn't want to deter from your. But
I didn't have a lot of profound things to say, other than because I've been on this journey with you and I see things differently. I really see things differently. And I was reminded of that over the weekend, that something really harmless, just a really pleasant conversation, mm-hmm. quickly went into a tone or just even not even a tone. It wasn't angry or whatever. It was just but that's the other team,
right?
That's the other team, and I got my team, and my team's right.
Yes,
and neither you nor I believe that either of these teams really matters.
Right. There, and you know, I think almost to the point now, sometimes by happenstance, they might happen to be on the side of the non-aggression principle and private property rights, rooted in self-ownership.
Yep.
But it's certainly not their intent to be there.
Right.
So when they do there, I don't know if it's an accident or what happened to them, how they actually got on the right track. But when I say track, that's also not fair. It's usually an issue, a single issue or something that happened to be there. And maybe they get there for political reasons to differentiate themselves from these other guys, to put the other team in a box by positioning that way. So, I mean, there's a zillion possibilities. But, you know, like people will ask me, hey, are you a fan of Obama? And I would say, well, whenever he supports liberty, freedom, I actually am on that issue. And when he's not, I'm not a fan. And I just make that mention about anybody.
Right.
I don't care if his name's Obama or Romney.
Right.
The guy. What's the difference?
Right.
For me, the issue is freedom. And again, non-aggression principle, private property rights rooted in self-ownership. That's what it's all about. And it takes a while for this.
It does.
To get that all in comprehension. And it took me a while. It takes everybody a while. But I think when you get there, it's kind of like a great light bulb's going on. It's like, man, holy cow, I can't believe I haven't seen this before. What was I thinking or what?
Yep.
And I think it's very difficult when you're in the red-blue paradigm.
Yep.
It is difficult to look at the broader picture.
Sure. So I went right from that conversation to, I told you I went home and I was going to do some stuff around the house, and I turned on the TV for a little background noise, and I think Gilligan's Island or Hogan's Heroes or something was coming on that I was really going to enjoy watching. Not really, but the schedule was wrong, and in turn, it came up with Minnesota state legislature or state senate hearing debate, and I went right from, I guess, observing the red team, blue team thing we just talked about to a representative up there just lavishing all over himself and some of his constituents for banding together to come together to change a particular law. And again, as I was raised, and as I guess most of us in this country have been raised, we have the right to speak, we have the right to the privilege to, and we've talked about this many times too. Probably we have it better than a lot of countries that don't. I think that's doesn't take a genius to say, but my learnings and my realizations from your teachings have been that, wow, okay, well, this is all really nice, and these people really think that they're exercising their voice, but the law that they were arguing over was something that is really a personal privilege to start with. So they banded together to get this law changed to get their personal privilege,
to impose their will,
and that's where I was going with this. So what about if I live in Minnesota and I don't, and I'm a voter, because I've got my say, and they've changed that law that I thought was the most important law ever, and now it's turned on me.
Right.
How fair is that?
Right. The whole point is, for me, is you are, in fact, entitled to your freedom. I don't care if it's what was on our Facebook page. A fallacy supported by 50 million people is still a fallacy. Mm-hmm. So what? A majority of people support doing whatever your issue is the one way, which in this example you might have been against. Mm-hmm. Why do they get to do that? And you say, well, people have said this to me many times in my discussions. Well, because that's the way our system works. Majority rules.
Right.
Yes, I'm asking you to question that. Why should simply a majority rule? If we could get more people together that say, hey, I think it'd be a good idea to take Bill Gates' money, does that make it right? And I'm using the air quotes on right because I hate to use that word. But right? Think about, just because we have a majority rule, that doesn't make it in concert with liberty, for sure. That just means more people, in this case, who voted one way than who voted the other way,
or rallied a movement to win over the opposition.
Absolutely,
whatever it is to get their way in the end.
And the weird thing about this, and again, we'll use the example that this legislation went the opposite way that, say, you and I would have liked, just from our preference. But the weird thing is, what we're really arguing here is the system is actually the problem. It's not necessarily these people that have a different view than me. Fine, have your own view. I don't have a problem with that. Just don't impose it on me.
Right.
And I get it. They're using a legitimate, I'm using the air quotes again, system to impose it on me. Nonetheless, they are imposing their will on me.
Right.
And the weird thing about this whole deal is, it's a weird system in a sense that, okay, in 5 years, 2 years, whenever the timing's right, 10 years, if we're still around, you and I can get together, and we could actually reverse all that legislation, right? Because we can get the majority with us.
I'm guessing that they're rallying right now.
Right.
Say, hey, how are we going to overturn this sucker?
Were we asleep at the wheel when they came in? They did, all right, we just got to be better organized. We got to do this right. We got to get enough money and get the message out, and then we'll get it changed back to the way it was. Well, okay, so what is liberty? When people say we have liberty, well, how could we have liberty when it's one way, and then it's turned around and goes the other way? Are you telling me they're both in concert with liberty? And many people, of course, equate democracy with liberty. That's a whole nother show.
They've been used synonymously with one another throughout most of our lives.
Yes, every president I think I've seen, they talk a whole lot of platitudes, and they talk these terms, and they contradict themselves, but I think they don't really realize it because they don't get caught in, by and large, by the public saying, hey, wait a minute. Right. Because people don't pay attention to that. It's a 30-second soundbite world, and that's that.
But everybody thinks that actually that is the way it is, I think.
Yes. And I am here the annoying peasant Tom, here to tell you not so. So anyway, I think it's interesting. It's a good illustration for people to, and I'm sure people listening to her would be, I guess I'd put them in the camp of my detractors at the moment, and I would just ask if you could hang in there. You might be persuaded. You might not.
You might not.
We had a discussion at the Liberty discussion group here last week. We talked about a whole number of items, addressing, of course, the system. We talked about, what was it? I was giving my explanation of the unified theory, which is my own term I made up for the liberty world. But the other thing I wanted to point out that we had talked about, and I just thought it was even important, obviously, for the members of the group. Libertarians are, and I don't know if I use the term very loosely, libertarians. If you want to be a stickler, I guess you can get me on the use of that term. But, a lot of times they're not, at least initially, do they really want to, say, they wouldn't say, I'm for legalized prostitution. They'd be for decriminalization. In other words, they're saying the state never had the authority to prohibit or outlaw it or sanction, put you in jail if you engage in that activity. So that's their way of saying that. But it is a little bit of a uncomfortable position to say, that I would say that should, and by the way, a drug should be decriminalized in these things, right, initially. Mm-hmm. Because it's not, I was going through the experience of, I had a conversation a while back with an acquaintance of mine. He's saying, well, we went through a number of issues because he found out I was an anarcho-capitalist, and so we got to chat, and he's, well, I agree with you on this, I don't agree with you on that, I agree with you on this. It's an a la carte thing. Well, first of all, there's no real exchange when you're just saying, yeah, I agree there, this, but the real question to me would be, why? Why would you agree? Why would you disagree? But first, I would say, but hey, I haven't arrived at these positions on these viewpoints just because. That's the whole point. In the libertarian world, there's a glue. There's a philosophy that holds those all together, which puts you in those positions. Like, you might not, in my case, I came from a conservative Republican viewpoint before. And if you talked to me 25 years ago, I would have said, of course, prostitution should be illegal. It's not good for women. It's a lot of times not good for the pimp either, but he takes advantage of the women. They wind up in jail. They get beaten up by Johns, on this whole laundry list. That's probably what I would have said. Well, as a result of understanding more fully what liberty is, I'm in a different position. Well, you have to understand, for at least a certain time frame, it's a little uncomfortable, right? I don't really want to be there in a sense, but now I really do want to be there because I think being consistent on freedom is more important. And by the way, let me step back 1 second. Just because I'm for decriminalization of these things, and when I say I mean the libertarian world doesn't mean they intend to encourage you to engage in that behavior, whether it be drugs. And people misunderstand that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a bit of an aside. But again, the difference I would argue between the acquaintance I had this discussion with and what I hope my viewpoint is mine's all tied together philosophically. In other words, I'm sending out a consistent message. 1, you own you and everything that happens as a result of that. And 2, the non-aggression principle, right? You should never initiate force against an innocent. That if you're consistent with those things, that's how you arrive at these positions. The person I was talking to arrived at them just because they think it's right or wrong. The problem is, what if what you think is right and wrong is a little different for me? You were brought up a Protestant Catholic, and I was brought up Islamic. And I would argue also it's actually a fairly simple message when you get right down to the roots of it.
I think one of the flaws of it is that it's almost too simple.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the frustrating things, too, that some people won't give it the time of day to even get to those two things.
Because they go, well, duh, we already have that.
Right.
And how could anybody possibly disagree?
Mm-hmm.
And we've quoted dozens and dozens and dozens of instances, every show probably, of where those are inconsistent and those you're violated.
Yes. And I think one of the show we did point out, and I think this is where it gets maybe tricky, maybe that's not the right word for people, is in personal relationships, they tend to follow the non-aggression principle and private property rights because me slugging you on the arm probably isn't going to make you a friend of mine. Right? I'm violating your property right by abusing your arm.
Yeah.
But I can,
or you come into my house and stealing my stuff.
Yes. That we don't tend to be fast and furious friends when that kind of stuff happens.
Right. Hey, I lose stuff when Tom comes by. I'm not having Tom come by.
Exactly. You come to that pretty quick. I'll give you that.
Right.
But, people don't realize I am doing a lot of that, but I just do it through a third party. I mean, I happen to call them the state. Many people call them the government, right? Whereas I can get your stuff. I can confiscate your wealth. If I advocate for more taxes and I advocate where it should go, I can get you to pay for what I want done or what I want to have or have access to.
That is about as short of a connection of the dots as we discussed. That's exactly what, when you talk about confiscating, when you talk about violating my property rights, I earn my money, but the state and its legislation and its laws determine where my money is going to go and what it's going to support.
And they also decide how much of your money they have, I want to say access to, rights to, right?
Yep.
In other words, they unilaterally set the tax rate. And you say, no, we vote on guys, yeah. Okay, at very best, you might have some influence. I would argue it's negligible, but say if you think it's more than that, great. But you're only voting for a guy or gal, and they're not tied to that position. In other words, I can run for, I don't know, county commissioner, I don't know what that, right? And I'm saying, I'm for lower taxes. I'm going to lower your county tax.
Right.
When I get elected, again, just assume I defeat my opponent. So I'm in office. I'm not bound to lower the taxes. In fact, I could raise them. There's nothing you can do. Now, you could maybe vote someone else in the next term. But the point is, when you say, I'm saying you facetiously, when somebody says, hey, I want higher taxes because I want this done, well, you can't do it directly. Right? And I can't do the opposite directly either. It's at very best, it's very indirectly. So it's crazy. I mean, it would be a little better maybe if you were voting on issues rather than for people who theoretically are going to represent your viewpoint in their body of legislation.
Right.
We talked about this before, but it's another. I wouldn't dream of going over to your house and telling you know what, you can't build your house like that. You got to build it like this. You got to do it like. But Tom, that costs more. I don't want to spend more money, or I don't have the money, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, but I do that all the time. I support people who want more stringent, more expensive is probably a better word, but we'll use stringent for the moment, building codes. So I'm telling you how you need to build your home. Mm-hmm. Again, on a personal level, we probably wouldn't be fast friends if I walked over there and told you how you have to build your house.
Mm-hmm. Or how I had to do my laundry, or had to cook my dinner, or whatever it is. I mean, we can take this to the sublime.
Oh, you can't use those chemicals in that laundry soap to do your laundry. I'm going to say that one's not purchasable, and you can only use this one.
Or you have to use those chemicals.
Yes.
Because you're going to, it's a detriment to you if you don't use those chemicals.
Right. I can either...
Now, why would anybody want you to use those chemicals?
Yeah, somebody might be selling them. They might have incentive for you to use them, right? And I know people say, "Oh, that doesn't happen," and then in the next breath they tell me, "Well, this whole government thing is all bought and paid for by lobbyists. If we just get rid of the lobbyists," I'm like, "Well, that's a whole nother show 235. That it's not as simple as that. The whole point is the state has authority, has power. It has something to sell. There will be buyers, right? So you can't just get rid of the buyers. There's still something for sale." Buyers will get there another way.
Right.
That's this whole thing that's the chicanery of, all we got to do is restrict the lobbyists. And by the way, haven't we been talking about campaign finance for foreign lobbyists and all this crap for how many?
Pretty much my lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are we doing there?
Well, and in our fine state of Wisconsin, it just got opened up even further. They said, nobody can give any more than this amount. Now they said, oh, forget that. Just go ahead and give all you want.
All right. So it's just
now again, why would lawmakers want to change that law?
Yeah, why would they want to have the capacity for you to support them more?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's a little. So, let me think of that for a while. Yeah. Maybe next show I'll have an answer.
So again, we're talking about examples here of places where all of these things that happen within our system are viewed as just normal procedure. And if we haven't made you think, I'm worried. Because this stuff happens every single day. We're peaceful, loving people. Tom and I are. We're not suggesting violence and going in a bunker.
We're actually suggesting the opposite, nonviolence.
Exactly.
But
just think about our system. Sorry, I interrupted you. But just think about our system and think about some of those instances we just mentioned, and do you think those are fair?
When you just bring up the system, that's a really great thing to bring up, because when I typically say to people, well, the system is actually the problem. A guy will come in and say, I hate Obama. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I think pretty much everybody's heard at least one person say that.
Sure. Or Joe Blow. Who knows? Right.
And I usually say to him, I don't think Obama is the problem. He may be a problem.
He may have different values than you.
And I would even go further and say, I don't think, where I disagree with him again, is just where he is tyrannical and non-supportive of liberty, and whenever he is, I am. But it's not, in a sense, he's the messenger. The problem is the message, the system, and people get really bent out of shape. When I say bent, they tend to be, at least my experience, very emotional about that. Wait a minute, you're saying this isn't the greatest country on earth?
Right.
And even if I say, yes, it is, but it can be improved.
Yes.
That still doesn't, at least I haven't had much success there with quelling. Well, you just get the hell out.
Yeah. You're unpatriotic.
Yes.
You're un-American.
Yes. You get out. And that just, then obviously you really know where to go, and you go, I'm talking to the wrong fellow here.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
how about those Cubs?
Exactly. Brewers, are they still on top of their division?
I think they are.
But so you got to pick your battles in a sense, and I'm not telling anybody you got to. Just for me, I have to, because I have to economize my time and energy. But when you think there's some light there that you can deal with somebody and talk to them for a while, I think it's best if it's unemotional and you just think it through.
Yep.
I think that can help. And, you know, at least in my 12 plus years of doing this, I think I've had good conversations with a number of people. In the end, by the way, I think that is ultimately the way it is. I don't know how many people could just listen to a radio show like this and come to completely embrace liberty. By the way, that's not the objective here. I mean, hey, if you did, bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is just to pique your interest, maybe get you to read and do some research on your own. The internet is a great place. Mises.org, Mises.org is a great starting place.
Yep.
There's a zillion places, but
LouRockwell.com.
Yep. But more, I think, lesson and a little
wait, Tom, shameless. They could read your blog.
Hey, that would be annoyingpeasantradio.wordpress.com.
See?
And I can't remember the last one. I think I wrote about a politician. I can't remember what it was exactly off the top of my head.
I would recommend it, guys. Tom writes and is very articulate, and I learned a lot from reading his blog. So check it out, please.
Yeah. So that'd be cool. So anyway, those are kind of summaries of some of the conversations you had with a friend of ours, and I'm just speaking a little more generically that I have these conversations with people, and so hang with us. Get a little more of the context if you can, and do some learning on your own. In the end, I actually believe everything that you know is self-taught. Think about that for a second.
You talk about that a lot.
I may expose you to it, or somebody else may expose you to something, but you're the one who internalizes it and digests it really and goes, yes, I got that. That's a good idea. Or, nah, it's not a good idea. I get what you're saying, but right?
Not for me.
Yeah. So you got to do this on your own. And I think it's actually on your own is the best way because you go at your pace, right? If I sit in a class, I come trapped into going at the teacher's pace or the classes. Just do it on your own. That's the best way. There's a ton of stuff out there. Which brings up, and I saw an article from one of my heroes.
Okay.
Dr. Hermann Hoppe.
Here we go.
Yes. We will make you talk. No. Anyway, he was, for those of you who don't know, he's written a number of books. Actually, I think he lives currently in Turkey, but he studied with Murray Rothbard. And again, if people don't follow us, you won't know who that is either. But maybe the greatest American libertarian, anarcho-capitalist. Anyway, he studied with him at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. But he was recently interviewed by the Daily Bell. There's an article, and I'm tying this. My son asked me, I tend to call it a free society. Hans Hermann Hoppe tends to call it a private law society. Okay. I think it basically is very much so the same thing. He likes that term better, and I don't have a problem whatsoever with his term. But my son had asked me a while back, he said, hey, how would laws be enforced? And I think he said, in a free society. This question was asked of Dr. Hoppe, and I just thought it was a little interesting to give you maybe the people who don't follow our show that frequently a flavor of where this is and how some of these questions are answered. So I just go, the Daily Bell interviewer asked, how would law and order be provided in this society, being the private law society? How would your ideal justice system work? And Hoppe answers, in a private law society, the production of law and order, of security, would be undertaken by freely financed individuals and agencies competing for a voluntarily paying, or not paying, if it were, clientele, just as the production of all other goods and services. How this system would work can be best understood in contrast to the workings of the present, all too familiar, we call it statist systems. If one wanted to summarize in one word the decisive difference and advantage of a competitive security industry as compared to the current statist practice, it would be contract. And that's, he's going to go a little further here, and I do want to read this because I think there's like 2 more paragraphs to his answer. But what he's really doing here, in a sense, he's not answering the question directly. he's saying, well, let's look at what we have, and I'll tell you how it would be different or what's wrong with what we have. And again, you alluded to, we've mentioned this many times, the inconsistencies in the current system.
Right.
So he's going to go through this, but I think this is a little enlightening. He says each private, freely financed security producer must instead offer its prospective clients a contract, which of course we don't currently have. And these contracts must, in order to appear acceptable to voluntarily paying consumers, contain clear property descriptions, as well as clearly defined mutual services and obligations. In other words, what is your property? That has to be disclosed. So if I'm going to be your security agency, I got to know what you own, right? And then in the contracts, I'm going to say explicitly what I'm obligated to do for you in exchange for this. I assume you're going to pay me money.
Right.
Right? I mean, that sounds, I know people, that sounds crazy. But you do that all the time when you have Windows installed at your home.
Absolutely.
Any service you do this, right?
Right.
But now all of a sudden it seems crazy when it comes to security. And that's Dr. Hoppe is saying, of course it's not. What's crazy is what we're doing now. But let me go back. He says, each party to a contract for the duration or until the fulfillment of the contract would be bound by its terms and conditions, and every change of terms or conditions would require the unanimous consent of all parties concerned. All, not like in the current system we have a majority can make the rules of the game change. It's like, wait a minute, how come you can change my contract, which really doesn't exist? But we monitor and change. The state operates in a legal vacuum. So now he's going back to what we have now, right? There exists no contract between the state and its citizens. It is not contractually fixed. What is actually owned by whom and what, accordingly, is to be protected, right? So it's not fully disclosed. It is not fixed what service the state is to provide, what is to happen if the state fails in its duty, nor what the price is that the customer of each service must pay. Rather, the state unilaterally fixes the rules of the game and can change them per legislation during the game. Obviously, such behavior is inconceivable for freely financed security providers. Just imagine a security provider, whether police, insurer, or arbitrator, whose offer consisted in something like this. I will not contractually guarantee you anything. I will not tell you what I oblige myself to do if, according to your opinion, I do not fulfill my service to you. But in any case, I reserve the right to unilaterally determine the price that you must pay me for such undefined service. Any such security provider would immediately disappear from the market due to a complete lack of customers. Right? And just parallel with that, because he's saying that's what we have now, right? And when I read this, I think some people go, yeah, that actually sounds crazy. But we still have the best system, so here we are. And I realize it takes a long time to get over that hump, but just go with us on the logic. Here he says, further, this is what would happen in a private law society. Specifically, in order to appear acceptable to security buyers, these contracts must contain provisions about what will be done in the case of a conflict or dispute between the protector or insurer and his own protected or insured clients, as well as in the case of a conflict between different protectors or insurers and their respective clients. And I got a couple more sentences, but I want to stop there for a second. So what he's saying is, these protectors, these service agencies, we've called them DROs, dispute resolution organization. You call them what you will, but the basic service probably would be there on the free market. Is they would say, okay, wait, you disclose to me you have 8 boats and 2 cars. That's all you own. So you're buying insurance or protection to protect those items. So contractually, they'll say, we will protect those items, how we'll protect them, and if we fail to protect them, what we'll do for you in that case, right? Which seems reasonable.
Sounds like insurance, Tom.
Yeah, sounds like, but they're more that they'll actually provide, they could be vertically integrated companies. Well, they'll actually, as part of the contract, we'll drive by once a day with a security officer. He'll either be armed, unarmed, he'll know judo, karate, he'll just look mean, right? Whatever, right? It'll all be disclosed what you're getting, and then you decide if it's worth, when we propose a fee, you say yes, no. because you can get a better deal elsewhere, you might go elsewhere. So, but he's saying not only is this dispute between some other guy who's taking one of your, or attempting to steal one of your boats, there's actually the possibility that I'm being the protection agency at the moment, I actually get in a dispute with somebody else. And let's just say, hey, the world doesn't go the way I think it should be. It should all go free here in a moment, which I don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But what if another government comes over here to attempt to take over all the land, and part of it is your 8 boats and 2 cars? Okay. I'm actually, as a protection agency, actually in a dispute with them because I'm saying, hey, you're invading my protected area. So it's a little bit, some people say, well, what's the difference? It's now a government. No, it's not. It's fundamentally not because of that competitive environment that you purchase with me or not, right? Okay. You engage with me or not. So the point is, what he's saying is, I can be engaged in dispute resolution with you that, hey, some Charlie over there took your boat, or I could be actually engaged with the government of China because they're trying to come over here and invade this country, right? Okay. And people will say, well, this dispute resolution, Tom, you're not big enough, you can't do it. Well, I think you're jumping to conclusions. I don't think that's the case. And the impetus for the Chinese to be doing these things in a free society would be very much less. It's a long story, but so it's not that that's just out there and geez, you got me. That I think, a dispute resolution organization would be too small, can't protect us from foreign invaders, we're going to be dead. I don't believe that at all to be the case. Again, it would take some explanation. So, but let me go on with his response. Again, the point of that sentence was the dispute resolution organization could be involved with you or with some other state agency or other dispute resolution organization, right? And in this regard, only one mutually agreeable solution exists. In these cases, the conflicting parties contractually agree to arbitration by a mutually trusted but independent third party. And as for this third party, it too is freely financed and stands in competition with other arbitrators or arbitration agencies. Its clients, the insurers and the insured, expect of it that it come up with a verdict that is recognized as fair and just by all sides. Only arbitrators capable of forming such judgments will succeed in the arbitration market. Arbitrators incapable of this and viewed as biased or partial will disappear from the market. So not only is there the security DRO agency, there's these arbitrators who have to be independent. They can't be owned by them because then you're not independent, right? Right. I can't have a conflict with you and say, hey, I own this arbitration agency. Let's use them as our third-party arbitrator. Well, they're not third-party. Right. Right? Okay? But he has a short one here, and I won't read the whole thing. But the next question is, so then are you denying that we need the state to defend us? And is the very short answer, there's a lengthy paragraph, but the first word is indeed. And I would be at the same place where Hoppe is. And there's a number of reasons, and that's buried in his answer. But I thought that was interesting for people who, well, how might a free society, a private law society work? That's just in dispute resolution, right?
It's very much a hypothetical.
Yes.
Right?
Because those agencies don't exist in the competitive market because we don't have a competitive market.
Right. So I'm going to play devil's advocate. Wow, that sounds like going to court. That sounds like the military. That sounds like the police. That sounds like...
Yes.
If I use the court system that I wind up in, which I know of friends and even one of my family members has wound up in arbitration over a dispute. What's so different?
Exactly. That's a great point. Anarcho-capitalists are not saying, hey, all the services that the state currently supplies wouldn't be supplied. They're saying the ones that a free market would buy on their own, the demand would be there, so supply would be created. But it's entirely different. Why? Because it's now competitive. If I ask most people, are you for monopolies? First of all, I'd have to kind of define monopoly, but most lay people will say it's just when there's a giant competitor in a marketplace. That I would argue is not the definition of monopoly, but they're not for it. Like the airlines is kind of maybe the thing at the moment that they're They're what's the word? They're coming together.
Antitrust or
yeah, they're more centralizing, right? That
right.
they're joining, all these big mergers
Right.
and consolidating is the word.
Sorry. Good.
That's the word I was looking for, right? So now there's fewer airlines, and by the way, most of these go in front of the FCC to go, hey, is this anti-competitive?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the answer is, of course, it's anti-competitive.
Right.
When there's less competitors.
There's an article this past week on, I think in the last couple of days in USA Today that said the Southwest, the impact of Southwest fares is no longer,
no more Southwest effect.
No more effect.
Yes,
right.
I read the same article.
What? Because they would go in and they would drive. They would say, "Look, we're going to undercut the competition, and we're still going to provide a valuable service." I was a big fan of Southwest. They were awesome.
Yes, I was too.
No frills airline.
Yes,
and so, but now, has the Southwest even been acquiring some people or
AirTran?
AirTran, all right.
That was the last one there.
Yep. So, we're getting to a place, and your point is very valid that is this quelching competition? Absolutely, it is.
Yes, less competitors means less competition. Right?
AT&T just decided to buy DirecTV for
yes
a whole potload of billions of dollars.
Right.
So that, as I understand, that they can compete with Comcast that was buying this and buying that and whatever. So is that good for the consumer?
Yeah, most consumers readily see this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They go, wait, less competitors? That ain't good.
Right.
But I don't know what I would argue it's indoctrination. But when it comes to the services that the state supplies, no, there can only be one supplier.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's no way. You can't have private courts.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask, why not? But again, that was a long answer. But wait, okay, so most people think, no, there has to be a monopoly on the provision of roads.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a monopoly on the provision of security services.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a monopoly on the provision of jurisprudence of the courts,
mm-hmm.
right? There has to be a legal monopoly in jailing.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a monopoly on transportation in the city,
mm-hmm.
whether it be buses, trains, or, hey, we have to regulate the taxi guys.
Right.
You just can't willy-nilly have people paying to get a ride somewhere.
Right.
That can't happen.
Right.
So that's what I find interesting, and I realize it's indoctrination, and again, it takes a while listening to the show to get where this is, because there's a lot of supporting information that I'm not giving here, but nonetheless, we can, and we have in the show in the past, taken a kind of a topic and gone through all that.
Yep.
But it all boils down to those two things that we talked about kind of at the top of the show.
Right.
Non-aggression principle, property rights rooted in self-ownership. But anyway, I thought that was interesting how Hoppe answers this question, and it gives maybe a little light of how things might work going forward. The broader issue is, though, that I like to point out is, if you come to see the system that we currently have as the use of aggressive force or initiation of violence and disrespect for property rights, that basically boils down to lying, cheating, stealing, murder.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, well, wait a minute. How would a society work with less of that? I'm a little unsure of how things would work. Well, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, I may not be able to tell you, and no one would be able to tell you exactly what the free market will provide, being a free market replacing the monopolistic system we have. So we don't know exactly what providers will provide. We won't know what people would demand for those services. But obviously they come together. They come together for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
That's how everything is created.
Right.
I don't see why nothing... But the broader question being, why can't we see so easily that, yes, the world would be a better place if there's less lying, theft, murder, rape? It's got to be better than what we have. And when I say less, people say, well, wait a minute. Why don't you just say there'll be none of that? Because wouldn't it be best if it was none? I absolutely agree. I advocate for none of that. I actually don't advocate for less of that. I advocate for none of that. Okay? But the difference is, I understand that the reality of the world is, just because people are free and they understand there'll still be bad people in this world,
mm-hmm.
and bad is a bad term.
Right.
Bad is a bad term. I fixed that, didn't it?
Profound.
Thank you. But so it will happen. The whole point is it would be the least amount that this society would be capable of doing. In other words, right? We have those random acts of murder, theft, rape, etc., cheating, lying, but we also have it systematically. If we eliminate the systematically, now we can spend maybe a little more time on getting rid of more of the random stuff.
Okay.
And not by force, not by initiating force against people. So
there you go.
That's where people struggle with this, that, anarchists, libertarians are not pacifists. When I say initiate violence, you can use violence in a private law or a free society. That's in defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are the two kinds of force. Because I talked with someone on a talk show a while back, and I brought up the thing about initiating defense, and she said, well, that's violent. I'm like, well, you got to understand there's two types of use of force. One is initiating it, and one is in response to it coming to you, defending your property. That is legitimate use of force. The other, initiating, is illegitimate. But,
okay.
So anyway, I probably went on too long about that kind of stuff, but I think it gives maybe people a little light of how things...
Everybody wants to know if they... I think that's a logical path for folks. If you and I are sitting with somebody and we start talking about, do they think this is fair? Much as we did in the beginning of the show, I think there's a lot of people that if they hang with us, they go, yeah, you're right, that's not fair, but you're telling me, how is it going to be different? This is a scary, scary proposition. So you're saying we're not going to have any government, and won't anybody be able to come kill me and take my money and bulldoze my house or steal my boat or whatever that is?
Yeah, and again, those are great points. The short answer is, yeah, just because the state or the government goes away doesn't mean security services go away, court services go away, road services go away. Those things don't go away. Just there's another provider.
So something to talk about at a later date, because it's probably a whole topic, but who's going to give those services, those free market services, those competitive services, the authority to do that?
That's a long answer.
That's a long answer. Next topic.
Next topic. I don't know. I thought the global warming issue came up again, and I'll tell you, it came up in an article by Jerry Brown. I'm pretty sure I have it right. Governor of California.
Sure.
Wasn't he the governor like a while?
He was.
And then he was out for a while, and then he was in.
Yeah.
All right.
He's an interesting dude.
Moon unit. Their moon something they used to call it.
Right.
I don't know. Not has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. But it just interests me. He was saying in this article I read, I believe he was on the talk show circuit this last weekend.
Okay.
I think where this article came from. I don't know if I have it up here or not. I was going to try to find it. Oh, and then we got to talk about Ben Carson quickly before we... Here we go. I'm getting there. Okay. He talked about basically climate change on his circuit. And, oh, geez, I want to get to the number. I think state of California is spending $600 million. I believe it's in this budget, he said. We've got to deal with it. We've already appropriated $600 million. Now, again, I don't know if that's in this fiscal year or what he's talking about. And he's talking about they have 5,000 firefighters in the state of California, going to need more, blah, 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 on and on and on. And then towards the end of this, I can tell you here where I am. I'm looking at the Los Angeles Times, Political, I guess is the section of the paper, which of course is online. He wraps up, or this article wraps up, and said, in other remarks, Brown also defended the use of water for shale oil fracking wells, warned that California should not open the floodgates to recreational use of marijuana, and declared Hillary Clinton the overwhelming favorite among potential Democratic candidates for president. But what the part I really wanted to talk about was, he was kind of saying, like, I can't find it in here, like, what is the worst thing that would happen if we spend all this money and it turns out we didn't need to? Mm-hmm. Right? That's what he's saying. So he's saying, let's say we're wrong and we do this. What are we really out? Well, for starters, $600 million, and you go, well, what's the big deal? $600 million is, a fine price to pay for insurance just to make sure. But think about this for a moment. If we are, again, this is the government doing this in California, which means almost entirely likely people wouldn't spend that money on that thing, on that service, in this, I guess I'll call it a service, those technologies, I don't know what they're buying,
Right.
on their own, right? That's why they're taking the money from the wage earners, and they're deciding to spend the money, when I say they, Jerry Brown's administration is spending it in a certain way. Because they wouldn't need to do that if people were doing it on their own, right? They'd say, well, why would we take their money to do what they're already doing? That makes no sense. So they're taking money from people who wouldn't spend the money that way. So obviously the individuals think, no, that's not a good use of my money. But also think about this $600 million. Maybe, I don't know, it's a famous, a smart doctor. And he now doesn't have the money that he might spend on figuring out his next cardiac surgeon, his next gizmo.
Right.
Which potentially could wind up saving lots of lives.
Tens of thousands.
But we can't do it now because that money was taken from him. He doesn't have the capital to do it. Right? Think about the pool. He said, well, you could just borrow it for somebody else. But maybe those other people, and they will in fact have less capital now because they had to send it into the state. Right?
Right.
So what I'm saying is look at the opportunity cost. How do we know that that's the best use of the money? And of course, I would make the argument, of course it's not the best use of money because you know how to use your money better than anyone else knows how to use your money.
Right.
Right?
But if I think, though, that global warming is a big issue and that that's the most important issue, or that I think it's certainly a very important issue, you should too.
And that is fine. I have no problem with that. So what I say to you is, persuade me. Right? If you have the higher, the moral ground, you have the higher logical ground, right? You have the superior argument. Maybe you won't be able to convince everybody because I just want to say, no, I just like to dump diesel fuel in my lake.
Yep.
It's been a family tradition.
Actually, I dig, pouring diesel fuel in my well.
Right, there you go.
Because it tastes so good.
Robust flavor that no one else has.
Right. Well, go ahead and do it, dude.
Right. So the deal is, that's what this show is about. I'm not trying to get a coalition together and we're going to vote for the world to be a libertarian world, which is actually a whole crazy notion unto itself. I'm going to force you to make the world free so you can do what you want.
Right.
So I'm going to force you to do whatever it is you want. That doesn't, right? Now I'm not forcing you. But so even right, we're trying to do this in the world of ideas. We're trying to be persuasive. We're trying to provide information and logic, and we're gonna try to get people motivated to go do the final learning on their own. I'm saying that's what the climate change guys should do. And for the moment, I don't know all the ins and outs of the thing. Maybe they're right. My point is the way they're going about it is in fact destructive. Right? You don't want to build your new house by burning it. It doesn't work. Right? You don't get anywhere that way. You build a little, it burns. Then you build a little more, and it burns. And in the end, you've got nothing. Right? You can't be destructive while trying to be constructive. You have to do this in a constructive way. You have to persuade people. They have to be educated. Right? And if I can't educate you, right, and I might get frustrated with you, I'm going to put you in a headlock and say, Brad, are you an anarchist? Right? You probably go, okay, I am, because I'm in a headlock, and as soon as you let me go, I'm not an anarchist, I'm just saying that to you. Right. Well, that's what's happening here. The state is using force on people to make them do what they want to do. It's not the way. If the state was really doing the right thing, they would be able to convince people of such. Just like if anarchy is really the best thing, I'd be able to convince people of, I'm working on it.
Yeah, that actually brings to mind, there was a thing going around among my friends this past week, or the last couple of weeks about, it was an interview, I think, a snippet from a NASA-based documentary, which I'm already contradicting myself, but because it's a national aeronautical space, and we've all taxpayer funded it, whatever, but look past that for the second, because that's already happened. But they talked about the exclusive club and the exclusive perspective that all astronauts, be they American, French, Russian, whatever, have all seen and felt that is unique to the rest of us. And that is being able to see the Earth from afar.
Yes.
And how they were interviewing many of them, and how some of the space shuttle ones and otherwise, some of the of other nationalities, saying how profoundly that affected them.
Yeah.
To be able to stand back and see that, and basically, I think that the title of the thing was something about Spaceship Earth. And so we're talking about global warming or whatever, and I'm not taking a position necessarily, but I thought it was a very, very interesting perspective that made me think that, yeah, we're all talking about, how many times in the news do we hear about colonizing another place or going to another, are we alone, all that stuff. But, here we are really on our own spaceship, if you look at it. And
Absolutely.
I found it to be very, very interesting, and I really enjoyed watching it.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. I love the analogy, of seeing the ship from a little bit of a distance so you can see the ship, right?
Right.
And I argue that's really the perspective I'm trying to achieve here with people of look at this system a little bit from above. Let's look at the broad picture.
And that's kind of why I threw that out.
Yeah.
It takes perspective to take yourself out of what we know and what we believe or been taught or whatever, to take yourself out of this daily environment and go, well, how could this be better? Cliche, outside the box, what have you, but change your perspective. Just think about it.
The real choice is not red-blue. It's not Democrat-Republican. It's liberty-tyranny. That's the choice, right? And we have to be educated of what is in fact liberty, what is in fact tyranny. Why would we think that liberty is better than tyranny? We make the decision. It should not be subject to popular demand, right? Majority rule. You are free. I know that Judge Napolitano, I think few people know of him. He's been on the Fox News channel, Judge New Jersey, I think, if I remember right.
Yep.
He's a big supporter of natural law, natural rights, and in his latest book, sorry, I don't recall the name, title, you can Google it and find it in short order, is that you are entitled to these rights by your nature, by being human, okay? But you lose them depending to the extent of, in a sense, geographically where you're born, right? If Zimbabwe is a little more tyrannical than the United States, you get to exercise less of your rights. You still have them. Their state doesn't let you exercise them. We may be able to exercise more of them. My argument is, why can't we exercise all of them? This government, the state, is just a creation of man. If it's created by man, we could just dismantle it. So again, back to kind of full circle where we were with your discussion with our mutual friend about the red-blue. That's not, I argue, that is not the choice. Democrat, Republican is not the choice. The issue is liberty versus tyranny. So
that's good.
That's why I wanted to just kind of wrap the show full circle.
Because we're the radio professionals that we are.
That we are. But before we go, Pacers or Heat?
Well, hello. Hoosier guy here.
Hoosier. All right, predictions. How many games? It's 1-0.
Well, I've got a wager with your son that it's Pacers in 6. But, we'll see.
But, so, wait, Pacers in 6. They won at home.
Yep.
So you're saying they're going to win one more at home? No.
They're playing tonight.
That's a home.
Yep.
If saying in 6, so they're going to have to win how many times on Miami's turf? Is
probably 2.
Going to have to take 2 from. No, 1.
1.
Take 1 there. And how does it go in the finals? Is it 2-2, 1-1-1?
Yeah. Okay.
So, which would be kind of a tough row. And of course, they have home court, so there is a Game 7. It's back on their deal. Right. I'll say this. Maybe, I don't know what the right, December, January, I would have said Indiana.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
And then they went away.
They just and they've even really been a mess in the first 2 series in the
They
playoffs.
have.
And it's like, every series I'm like, I could see them definitely losing this.
I wouldn't give it a nickel for them.
Right?
But
And now, this is the first series this year for them that they were actually up 1-0, right? Aren't
yep,
they usually?
that's correct.
And they're always the home team because they have home court.
Yep.
So they lose their first game at home every series until they play the toughest team, arguably.
Right.
And now they win it. So it's a roller coaster deal. So
We'll see.
it will be interesting.
Yep.
Uh,
If nothing else, it's great to chastise your son.
well, even I like that part.
Exactly. I thought we'd have that in common.
So anyway, with that, we kind of did our wrap up philosophically a little bit ago, but I just wanted to, talk about that Indiana Pacers because it's so interesting where they are.
I want to thank everybody for listening to us. I hope that you'll, at the very minimum, I hope that we make you think. And I would say also, be careful if we do, because that's how Tom was able to help me understand all of this, is just my questioning and curiosity, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you again, folks, for listening. Thanks, Tom, for a good discussion.
Yeah, you got questions? Contact us on our Facebook page.
Absolutely.
Or go to annoyingpeasantradio.wordpress.com and comment on one of my articles there.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.